Hey everybody, Jamie Stokes from Roy LePage. So in today's video, I want to discuss why it's not a good idea to deal with a listing agent as a buyer. So over the years that I've been doing real estate, I've had many people reach out to me, call me or email me and ask me if I'm the listing agent on a specific property, which I will tell them if I'm not, no, I'm not. But I can still help you. And the reason it's not good to deal with the listing agent as a buyer, among many reasons, the main ones that I'm going to touch on are the fact that when a real estate agent signs a listing agreement, they owe their primary duties to the person that they're representing. So essentially, we're representing the best interests of whichever client we represent. And I'm going to ask you this: if I'm signing a contract and I have sworn to basically represent the interests of my client first and foremost, how can I do that for the buyer and the seller at the same time? Well, simply put, you can't. You have to owe more care to one person than the other. Now, that's not saying that you can't represent both, because here in Ontario, we're allowed to represent the buyer and the seller, which I don't recommend. I personally never do, just because it can end up in all kinds of problems. What I'll typically do is refer the buyer out to another agent and maybe collect a referral fee on that. So when we're signing the listing agreement, a lot of people believe that by dealing with a listing agent that they can save money. But I'm going to ask you, if you have a duty of care to your first client, which is the seller, as the listing agent. So you're legally obligated to look after their best interests, and you can't do that for the seller as well as the buyer. The buyers in the past, even though I try to explain this, I feel like some people may think I'm dishonest by saying this, but it makes total logical sense. And if you're interested, I could actually show you the paperwork of a listing agreement. So in the past, people thought that by dealing with a listing agent that they would save money. While this is possible, there's a separate document that we would have to sign with the sellers, saying that if we represent the buyer and the seller, that we would be giving them a specific discount. So I would say that most agents that I know don't even know that this document exists, and sellers are unaware of this document. They don't know that it exists, so they're not going to request it. In that case, you're not going to save extra money, because the listing agreement already says in it how much the listing agent will be paid for their commission and how much the buyer's agent will be paid as commission. This is already stipulated as soon as we sign our listing agreement. It's not pre-filled out, but this is something that you can negotiate, and we can discuss this. But if you have somebody that comes to you and wants a discount, are you going to go back and change the original paperwork for the listing agreement, or are you going to just allow yourself to make the same commission that the buyer's representative would make? So, if the total commission is 5%, for example, or 6%, we'll just use 5 as an example, 2.5% goes to the listing agent and 2.5% goes to the buying agent. We'll just use this as an example. It can be whatever numbers you want it to be. It's all up to negotiation, but we'll just use this as an example. So 2.5% to the listing agent, 2.5% to the buying agent. Do you believe that a listing agent, if you come to deal with them directly, is going to give away part of their commission? Because remember, this is their livelihood. They get paid no other ways unless a deal closes. Do you think that your average agent is going to cut their commission in order to give a perfect stranger a break and just give away their commission when the seller has already agreed to pay whoever the agent is that's representing the buyers this amount of commission? Chances are no, and I haven't really seen that myself. Not that I view other agents' documents, their private confidential documents, but does it make sense to you that somebody who has already agreed on paperwork to make 2.5% and 2.5%, a total of 5%, that they're going to give away a stranger 2% or 3% or whatever of their commission. Chances are that's not going to be the case. I rarely see that happen. I don't think I ever have seen it happen. But at the same time, it seems logical that that's not going to happen. So there's a conflict of interest when you're representing the buyer and the seller, and you can bet your bottom that if there are any issues with the closing or with the property, that the realtor is going to be on the hook. So as a realtor, it's not in your best interest to represent the buyer and the seller, because I can almost guarantee if there are any issues, you will end up in court and you will have a lot of problems. So don't represent the buyer and the seller. Refer out the buyer to another agent, somebody in your office, or a friend that's a realtor or whatever. So they're not going to, as a buyer, the general public needs to know that a realtor is not going to give away part of their commission to a complete stranger. If they can make, if you can make $10,000 or $20,000 in commission, are you going to give away a third of that or whatever to some perfect stranger that comes around and says that they'll deal with you if you take off part of your commission? It doesn't happen in real estate that I'm aware of. You may have realtors argue with me and say, oh, I do that all the time. Well, chances are they're full of crap, but it doesn't make sense that you can properly prioritize both as first place. So you need to think about that. If you're going to the listing agent and you're asking for a discount, first of all, you're probably not going to get it, because there's going to be a buyer that comes along anyways, and they can't represent your best interest as a buyer as well as the seller's best interest. So don't try and deal with the listing agent. Like I said, I don't deal with buyers and sellers in the same transaction. It's just a recipe for disaster, and we owe a duty of care of honesty and integrity and all these things to anybody that we deal with, but we owe more to whoever we're representing. We're representing their best interest, and we cannot possibly, or think about it logically, we cannot possibly represent the best interest of the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. So those of you who think you're going to get a deal by dealing with a listing agent, that's not the case, and there's also a conflict of interest there. For more real estate tips, follow my videos, like, subscribe, and if you have a specific real estate subject that you'd like me to discuss, drop me a comment and I'll be happy to make a video about that. Take care for now.